Hi, this is Yvonne Galusha, and I'm going to go over an application for VBA that processes using arrays. So the scenario is, and granted I just have a small amount of data here, but you can imagine there would be lots of data in the real world, where you have a sheet with information about sales. So you have many different product codes that you're selling, and this is just where each line or row represents a sale. So various quantities and the price and the total amount. So if you had a need to find out what products sold in this data set, you would need to go through and find out unique product codes. So that's what this macro does. And it lists each time only once the product code. This just removes them. So the purposes for this little video is to basically go through how to use arrays to solve this problem. Now, when you're trying to code things, it's a good idea to get a picture in your mind and kind of imagine what it is you need to accomplish. And the next step then is to write out your pseudocode and then write the code that matches your pseudocode. I've said this many times, but by doing this, it will separate the logic of solving the problem from the syntax of implementing the solution. And it's much more efficient if you can learn to develop applications this way. So I've just put a little color coding here to exemplify the visualization. See, this yellow is representing like an array. Remember, arrays are in memory, so you're going to take the data from the worksheet and put it into an array. An array is going to have all these little values in each cell. And so that's the first step. Move all the information from the worksheet into an array. But you're going to have to create a second array because that's where you're going to put when it's unique. So the process is going to be, obviously the very first one would just go over there. But then when you get to the next one, you have to compare it. And if it's not there, then you put it over there. You probably are getting the idea. The next one, you have to compare it, and let's say it is there. So then you just go to the next one. And so you're going to continue that until you go to the end of that first array. And when you're done, you have just the unique ones in that second array. I find it helpful to write out my pseudocode as comments. And that way I'm right there ready then to fill in the syntax once I'm really comfortable with my logic. So here's my pseudocode. I start out saying I need to declare the variables. Then I need to load the product codes from all sales into an array. So I'm going to count the number of sales. I'm going to redimension the size of my array, and I'm going to loop right down that column and move all those values into an array. Now I'm ready to actually start going through and finding unique values. So again, I have an outer loop. You can see I'm using indentation to kind of help with the structure. And I'm saying loop through product codes from all of the sales to find unique product codes. Well, that's just an overall comment. Here's where I actually start doing it. I'm saying I'm going to have a for loop for each product code in that larger array. Now I'm going to be looping through there because I didn't necessarily say end. I just am knowing that this is all inside because it's indented. So I'm going to set each value to the new product to true. So I'm going to have to keep track in order to have an index to add the new one if I find another unique one. So right now I'm going to assume it's true. If the number found in the counter is greater than 0, then we found a code. Loop through the unique array, comparing to see if this particular code from all data has been found. Okay, so if it has, then I'm going to set a new product to false because I've found it. And I'm going to jump out of this comparison loop. Otherwise, I'm going to move on to the next product in that data comparison. And eventually, if it has not been found, then I need to increment that number found counter. I need to redimension the array. and then I need to write that new product code into that second unique product array. So that's the basic logic. Now let's go ahead and look at the code. Some of this should be fairly straightforward. I'm assuming you can go ahead and create your variables, so I'm not going to spend time talking about that too much. The next thing then is to move the data from the worksheet into the array. I covered this in lecture, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that either. I need to get a count. I'm going to need to redimension it. And then I'm basically going to do a for block right there. I'm using offset, and I'm moving the values, just the product codes, so it's a one-dimensional array, into that all products array. Now I'm ready to actually do the processing. So here's that larger for loop that I was talking about right there. So I need to go all the way through that yellow column, going down one cell at a time. So that's where I'm doing my number of sales, for 1 to the number of sales. I set is new product true. That's like a flag. And I turn it to false once I've found that it's not new. I found a match. Okay, so here's my check. If found is greater than 0, then I'm going to go on. Let me stop a minute and talk about that number found. The only reason I need this is because the very first time there's nothing to compare to. That second array is empty. So if it's not empty, then I need to go ahead and do some comparing. Otherwise, I'm going to come right down here. It is new, so I'm going to go ahead and add it. So here's where we actually do the comparison with that inner for loop. So I'm going to say until, I'm going to process through. The number found represents the size of the second array, the unique one. So I need to compare the current cell from the larger array to each cell in the smaller array. So I'm doing the if all products using that same index I. See, I is the one going through the larger, and I'm using that as the index there, equals the value in the smaller array. So that's J. That's my inner for loop index. So if those are equal, then it's not a new product code. So I set that flag to false, and I immediately exit. There's no reason to continue. Assuming you go all the way through that second array and it never falls into that if then it's going to end up where that flag is new product is still true. So that's when we come down to, we exit that inner for loop and we do a check. If it's true, then we need to add it to that second array. So the first thing is to increment the number found and then redimension the unique product codes array to that larger size number found. Remember, I talked about how important it was to use the word preserve if you don't want to lose values. Then you go ahead and move it into the array. So we're going from the large array to the smaller array, or in other words, unique product codes, using that nFound, still using I for the index out of the larger array. Then that ends that for loop. So you continue that process for every item down that larger array. So when you're done with that, you just output it, and that's code that you've done before, but the only difference is now you're moving data from an array. That's not too difficult. First we put our headers, and now we just have a single for loop because we're just going in one direction down. However, I'm using offset, so column is going to always be 0, but the row value is changing as well as the index into the array is changing. So that's one macro. And the second one, I'm just clearing out that area. That's pretty simple. I don't think I even need to address that. But hopefully you found this helpful for seeing how to use arrays for processing. Let me know if you still have questions.